particular section or this workshop. I would certainly, at the very outset, convey my appreciation to the organizers, Independent Power Producers Association of India, for organizing this workshop. Electricity, obviously, is energy for consumers of all different kinds, industrial as well as domestic. So ultimately, it's the impact on the consumer. That's the most important thing. The acts or the amendments, they are meant for the consumers. I mean, whether we amend or to what extent we amend, okay, that depends upon how that's going to be beneficial for the consumers that's the ultimate analysis. So this is certainly a very important issue, and I would certainly agree with my previous speaker that many of the issues surrounding the benefits or cost to consumers of all different kinds should be considered more comprehensively before any concrete measures are taken. And I would also like to add here that my apology, I have not been here to the first sections, so I don't know what points have already been discussed, so there certainly be a repetition of some of the things. But I would very briefly like to look at some of the issues and present before you some observations on some aspects of the proposed amendments. Well, as we all know, this bill was introduced in Lok Sabha in December 2014. The bill seeks to amend the Electricity Act of 2003. Primarily, it seeks to, as my previous speaker has already mentioned, to segregate the distribution network from the electricity supply business. It also seeks to introduce multiple supply licenses in the market. I think that's a crucial point that has to be noted, okay, in terms of the structure of markets that may evolve. And it was expected that this amendment would bring big reforms in the electricity sector and will be beneficial to the ultimate end users or consumers. And our Power Minister also added that this particular Amendment Bill 2014, this will certainly promote competition, efficiency, and improvement in the supply of electricity in the country, resulting in capacity addition and benefit to consumers. Well, the bill, as and when it was passed by the Parliament, okay, has certainly serious implications. Consumers may theoretically get the choice to buy power from companies of their choice rather than being tied to a single power, as is the case now in most states. But at the same time, I must say that this could accelerate a process by which state utilities' losses deepen. It may impose a heavy fiscal burden on the respective state governments. This point has to be taken, this point has to be pondered over. The concept of multiple power suppliers may lead to privatization of power supply in the country, so there is going to be a change in the structure of the provision of service. Something to do with the marketization and all the other consequences that may follow. So this is an extremely important issue, given the financial dependence of state distribution companies on the revenue from particularly high-end consumers. Now, these models with this open access in some form have already been experienced and tried in some cities, okay, like Delhi and Mumbai. Well, in my opinion, not with much improvement. However, promoting open access, this will induce competition resulting in higher efficiency and competitive electricity prices. So that's the other point that we must take into account, unless, of course, the commissions decide otherwise at the state level. some of the issues, or the key issues, which will have an impact on consumers. Okay? If you just look at it, the bill proposed under this particular clause 3, okay, that for the word distribution licensee, the word supply licensee shall be substituted. The proposed approach is obviously more consumer-oriented, as supply licensee would play the role of both distribution and supply licensee. Independent entities who can supply electricity would operate in larger numbers, that is what is expected, instead of a handful or monopoly of distribution agencies. This would promote open access and bring in competition, and consumers will be given a choice to select the source, as we have already noted. Okay. It has been observed that in parts of Asansol Durgapur area, sponge iron and steel re-rolling industries, they prefer to have supply from DVC having significantly lower tariff than their West Bengal counterpart, which is WBAC DCL. Okay. So that's something that we need to look at. The next point for discussion might be, if you take a look at the introduction of smart grid. We all know that we expect that the smart grid, and particularly the smart metering, would certainly benefit consumers. The consumer will be benefited with the integration of smart grid and the smart metering system in power. And some of the ways they will benefit, we have already mentioned: improve reliability of supply to all consumers, no power cuts, help identify and reduce outages, better quality power, no more voltage stabilizers. This will enable, hopefully, online visualization of energy consumption at consumer level. It may provide options for renewable generation, integration to grid options for prepaid connection, might reduce meter reading errors. It's expected that there will be better control over electricity bills by utilizing time of use and time of day tariff. There will be reduction of aggregate technical and commercial loss. This will save energy by intelligently controlling loads, such as street lights, and of course, we expect this to be user-friendly and transparent interface with utilities. Open access under clause 49(1), okay. We have already mentioned that all consumers with having a connected load of 1 megawatt and above with the power system, they must procure at their option electricity through open access, and I quote, under bilateral arrangement from any generating company, trading licensee, or from any other source. As such, it's easy to infer that open access would be practically enjoyed by large-scale consumers, users of 1 megawatt and above. Now, we know that even today, the so-called open access, this is allowed for larger consumers with a load of 1 megawatt and above. We already have this particular system. Maharashtra and Bangalore power utilities, as a result of that, have lost major revenue share as large industrial consumers of the area have opted for open access. So we need to look at it, whether it should be only for large-scale consumers and what will be the impact. And we have, our previous speakers already mentioned about the penalties. Penalties of defaulting companies has been made much more stringent. Okay. The quantum has been raised almost tenfold. However, penalties are only a tenth in case of renewable energy companies. Okay. So no doubt, the penalties of defaulting companies has been made more stringent, and we presume that this would ensure better service to the consumers. The penalties being just a tenth in case of renewable energy companies, which we believe would encourage business in this sector, and potential consumers in remote rural areas, they could be benefited, as otherwise conventional electricity has not yet happened in those areas. We should note that more than 40 crores of Indian population, or about 7 crore families, are still not using electricity. We have just looked at some of these issues, very minor issues, but very tricky ones. The issues which still remain, and some of the things we recommend for for modifications. Okay. We know there will be multiple interface of the consumer with both distributor and retailer, service line, service deposits. This may cause more confusion and harassment for the consumers. So how do you resolve this? Well, consumers may interface only with the retailer for all purposes, and retailers' customer relationship management mechanism may interface with distributor as required. We have at the moment non-transferable security deposits. This is a minor issue, but it should be taken care of. Consumer has to pay to new supplier, and then only they can withdraw from existing supplier. This certainly is not in favor of consumers and will impair switching. So security deposit must be transferable. And third, which is I think is the most important thing, if you look at the Act 2003 or the amendments to the Act, I'm sure other previous speakers have probably mentioned this, we do not see an explicit mention of obligation to serve. Okay. We have an obligation to connection. We see a mention of that, but we need an explicit recognition of this and specification of this particular obligation. Consumers, it was also proposed as consumers' protection would be, to some extent, provided through mandatory government-owned retailer. However, I don't think that it's required to make mandatory government retailer to start with. We can introduce government retailer at any time through licensing. Management of switching, that's very, very important. That's another issue. Law need to have enabling provisions on switching registry, meter, data management, clearing house, functions, etc. Since this is essential for the arrangement to work, okay? And regulations can amplify these provisions. And finally, the issues relating to matters like rooftop solar and net metering, these are fundamental to the operation of the retailing framework, and such issues related to the consumers need to be mentioned, need to be taken care of. So in conclusion, well, the bill at many sections like this highlights the interest of the consumers. There's no doubt about that. At the same time, I would say that some sections create more confusion from the consumer's point of view. The amendment certainly seems to push the commercialization of electricity, opening up the sector to corporate houses, both international and domestic. Therefore, the priorities of the amendments seem to be in favor of high-income groups where people want 24/7 quality power supply without bothering for tariff. So where do we, or how do we ensure the fate of the poor people, those poor people who do not have power connection? I don't know. We really need to ensure covering poor people who do not have need for this much of power. Their fate may simply be sealed as the power generation in the country is much lower than power demand. If you look at the statement of objects and reasons mentioned, the statement of objects and reasons, this mentioned that based on the recommendations of the working committee, or working group rather, on power, which was constituted by the Planning Commission in March 2011, and experience gained during these years, it was felt that there is a need to review and amend some of the provisions keeping in view the overall objectives of the said Act to bring in further competition and efficiency in the distribution sector by giving choice to the consumers, promotion of renewable energy, maintenance of grid security, rationalization of tariff determination, and strengthening of the regulatory commissions. We also need to have a look at the overall power generation and power supply and look at all different sectors of consumers, different groups of consumers. So the bill certainly needs to be modified appropriately to highlight the government's mission, which is power to all by 2022. That is at least 1 unit of electricity per day, per head. And I hope this would certainly be implemented. Thank you very much.